What I want to know is how does one get involved in doing rock work as a woman? Do you really, really want to know? Or do you just want the rehearsed response that I always give? What would happen if we chose to really tell the truth about ourselves? Like if we really, really just told the real truth of our lives? I'm not saying that it's true. I'm saying that it's my truth.
You're listening to Hammered.
The day I left home for college, it was kind of a sad day. My mother and I weren't speaking. We'd gotten into something over the summer, and I can't even remember what it was, but she was pretty pissed off at me, so I had gotten everything packed up and ready to go, and my dad was going to follow me in his truck. And so I went down the hall to find my mom, and she was cleaning the bathtub, and more like sanding the bathtub with Comet. And I went in and I said, "Well, I'm leaving, Mama." And she kind of looked up, but she really wouldn't look at me. And she said, like in a real like stern, direct voice, "Well, just take care of yourself." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, I love you." And she didn't really answer. And so I walked back down the hall and I went out and got my car, and me and my dad left, and I started crying. And I remember just crying for a long time, and I was playing music, and I was pretty nervous, but I was very, very excited to go to college. I was very excited to leave, and I was going to be in the mountains, and I was ready. But I just wanted her to just to be okay. I wanted her to be okay with me. And it just wasn't going to happen. And so when we got to the North Carolina state line, boy, I dried it up. The tears were gone and the excitement kicked in, and I was there. And we got there, and my dad helped me unload my stuff, and I went in and I met my roommate, and her name was Colleen, and her mother was there, and she was from Charlotte. And so she was an interesting person. She had like this really black, curly hair, sort of like an afro, but she was real pale. She had very, very white skin, except her cheeks and her face were real red, and her nose was red, kind of like a W.C. Fields, like a skinny female version of W.C. Fields. And I think she might have been an alcoholic, but the minute that our parents left, she shut the door, and she had her hands behind her, and she was holding the doorknob, and she looked straight across the room at me, and she said, "Do you have a car?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I've got a checkbook." And I said, "Okay." And she goes, "Let's go get beer." And so, 5 minutes out of the gate, here we are, and we go get beer. And we come back, and, I guess she was nervous, and we were both nervous. And so we drank some beers and talked, and we're kind of getting to know each other. And she was pretty funny. And it was time to go to the cafeteria. And she actually said, "I'm not going to eat that shit." I think she came from like a lot of wealth and kind of had an attitude of entitlement. And so I went on to the cafeteria, and I remember feeling very out of sorts, sort of like almost not even in my body. And I was walking through, and I had my tray, and I heard somebody go, "Haynie, over here." And I look, and it's a table full of girls, and it was the girl who yelled my name was one of the basketball girls that I had tried out with when I came up to try out. Her name was Joyce, and she was from Gainesville, Georgia, and I really liked her. She was real sweet, very kind and friendly, and she invited me to come sit with them. And I came on over to the table, and I was getting ready to put my tray down, and there was a girl sitting beside her who was looking up at me, and it just stopped me in my tracks. And I don't know if there's a such thing as love at first sight. All I know is that it was like she looked right into me. And she was just beautiful. She looked like a real softer version of Brooke Shields. Like, she didn't have the intensity that Brooke Shields has. She had like a light kind of blondish brown hair and very blue eyes. And I mean, she just looked angelic. She was very pretty and very kind eyes. And so everybody at the table introduced themselves. And so I sat there, and, of course I was just self-conscious as hell. And I mean, I didn't even want to eat around people. I was that self-conscious, but I made it through. And so a couple of nights later, these girls came by my room, and they had a basketball, and I heard the basketball dribbling down the hallway. And they came to the door, and they go, "Hey, come on down to the gym. We're going to scrimmage against the guys." And I was like, okay, because when I was in high school, which was like months before this, we always scrimmaged against the guys, and it was hardcore. I mean, we didn't fuck around. We played for real, and it helped you get better. And so I thought, okay, well, good. So we go down to the gym, and I get down there, and they're already kind of shooting, and some of the college guys were in there, and they were being all cocky, So we started to scrimmage. It was 5-on-5, and we kind of mixed it up, where there were some guys on our team. We mixed it up. So, but what I noticed was that these girls, like some of them, not all of them, but they would turn into these like, oh my God, like giggly, not playing serious, just sort of being goofing around and being like little helpless girls. And it was really getting on my nerves and pissing me off, because I was ready to play. I mean, I was brand new, and I'm thinking, what have I gotten into? Like, is this how they are? And so I was really playing hard the way that I play. And I could tell, that they were just kind of being silly and letting the guys dominate. And then, oh my God, you're so good and all that. It was, it just made me kind of sick. So I was down there for about 45 minutes, and then I said, I got to go. So I went on back to my room, and I was sitting there with my roommate telling her about what had just happened. And a few minutes later, maybe 30 minutes later, the door knocks. And it's the Brooke Shields girl. And she comes in, and she sat down in a chair kind of right in front. I was sitting on my bed. And she said, "Can we talk?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Yeah." And then she looked at my roommate and asked her if she'd leave. And the roommate was kind of like, "Oh, okay." So she leaves. And so we were sitting there, and she was just concerned. And she said, she just asked me why I left. And I told her, I said, I'm just used to playing serious. And I don't know, it kind of got on my nerves. So I kind of told her, but I was also very nervous, because I had had that sort of interaction with her at the cafeteria. So we talked and talked, and she said, "Well, we're real glad you're here. You're going to play on our team and all this stuff." And then she looked at me and she said, "Do you want to get stoned?" And oh my God, at that moment, that was one of those forks in the road, one of those divine moments in our lives. And of course I said yes. The next thing I know, we're down under the weeping willow trees beside the little river that ran through the college, and we sat there and we got high, and I finally was able to relax, and it was just being in the present moment. And I was in the moment with her, and I just remember everything being very illuminated, and the sky, the moon, the creek, and seeing her. And I knew on some level that this person was going to be in my life for the entire time that I was going to be there, I felt. And so that experience that night opened up this world of a friendship. I mean, I was completely infatuated with her. I don't know what was going through her mind, but I know that I had never felt that way about another human being in my entire life. Not on this level. I mean, I had loved my grandmother very, very deeply, but it was a different kind of love. This was almost like an obsession. So we began hanging out, and then I had to get a math tutor because I had math phobia pretty much. And when I went down to meet the tutor that was down in the basement of the dorm, I walk in and it was her. And I was like, oh my God. So there's my math tutor. And so we began this friendship, and we would get stoned and drive to the forest and get stoned and walk in the snow, and it was just like this magical time. I was away from home. I wasn't getting yelled at. I was practicing basketball, and I was good, and people recognized that. And it was just such a magical time in my life. So I just realized, that second year of being in the ice cream business, I sort of compared it like to the second year of college. The first year of college is such just a fun time, and it's magical, and it's mystical, and you can't wait for what's next. But the second year is kind of like old hat. You kind of know the people, you kind of know what's happening. So the second year into this ice cream business, I was kind of trying to figure out this whole situation with this Allison and Lisa, these two girls. And so we started going after work with Bill and Dan and Lisa and Allison. We'd go to this place called the Wooden Nickel. And I kept trying to figure out, what is Bill's infatuation with Allison? And finally one night I saw an exchange, and she gave him a little pack of cocaine, and I saw the whole thing go down. And then I started getting it that she was a dealer. And so we all, would sit down at the Wooden Nickel and laugh and drink and talk. And Bill was constantly giving poor Dan a hard time. Dan the ice cream man was the sort of round, quiet guy, and he lived at this place called the Claremont Lodge, and Bill was always making fun of him about having to get hookers and stuff. And Dan admitted it. He said that he would get prostitutes, and that's where he spent all his money. And I felt real bad for him, and he was honest about it. And he was lonely, and he was chubby, and he didn't have any confidence. And I just always felt very deeply for Dan. I didn't make fun of him. I really liked him. And Dan was super smart. He had a big vocabulary, and he listened. And I don't know, I knew that we were going to be friends. And so, then we started going and hanging at Allison and Lisa's apartment. They invited us there after hours, and it was this really kind of weird apartment complex. It wasn't that it was weird, it was just kind of dark. It was in the woods almost. There was a lot of trees. It was real woodsy, a lot of pine trees, and it was kind of right off the interstate, but it was, the pine trees sort of gave it like a woodsy feeling. But when you walked in the apartment, it was dark and kind of dirty, and it was just an energetically dead space. And we would sit there and do cocaine on the glass coffee table, and Allison always had this $100 bill. She was sort of like a Mac Daddy, like a, like the cool girl with the pretty girlfriend kind of thing. And I was starting to figure out that they were a couple. And I was like, this is really weird. But Lisa and I had kind of, had this connection sort of on the side. And I could tell that she was sort of waiting for me, and I would ignore it, but I knew that it was happening. And it made me very nervous, because she was very pretty, and I thought, I cannot be getting involved in this triangle. I already had a weird triangle going on with Anne number one and Karen. But it was sort of a gay thing. It was sort of a gay women, a gay girl thing. I don't even call us women because we were so young. But I mean, you might be like slow dancing with your girlfriend, and then somebody else is slow dancing with their girlfriend, and they would be like hitting on you or winking at you, or and I think maybe because we were all coming out of high school, college, and there was no reference point. If you'd gone through high school in the closet and you never got to go to dances, I mean, you did everything and acted straight, you never got to experience what that feels like to have somebody be attracted to you. So I think once you're in the gay world, in the gay scene, it's almost like a candy store, you just, if you don't like this person, you just go get with that person. And it was sort of weird and incestuous, but so I just sort of would go with, Allison and Lisa. And one night they took me over at this guy's house, and they said, yeah, we're going to go over at Doug's house. He's amazing. He's a guitar player, and he loves the Dead, and he's blind. And we go over there, and this guy, he wore like super, super, super thick Coke bottle kind of glasses, kind of wire octagonal glasses, and curly brown hair. And he was very nice. He was a kind guy, and he was obsessed with Jerry Garcia and the Dead. And so he played, and we would do Coke and drink, and Coke and drink, and Allison would always get up and start doing this little weird shuffle, this little Grateful Dead shuffle, and she'd shake her head backwards and shake her shoulders, and I would just kind of sit there. But there was this other guy that was like Blind Doug's sidekick. His name was Lee, and he had like fourth grade boy hair, the kind of hair that's like real straight bangs, and he sort of parted it in the middle and kind of combed it where it was in the middle, but it was real straight, and he had really big hips for a guy, and he had really big hips and big thighs, and he was oddly proportioned, and he would sort of play a little bit of guitar, and he wore like puka shell necklace, seashell kind of necklace around his neck. And so him and Doug would kind of play music, and I think maybe they were together, because they weren't interested in the girls. It didn't seem like they were interested. And so I don't know what was going on there, but there I was, and I was in the middle of it. And so we would drink and smoke and do Coke all night long. And then, it'd be like coming out of that house, and the house was a brick ranch in this neighborhood. It was just it was a rental house, but it was in like the common suburban neighborhood, which was odd. But we would come out of there in the morning and have to go and get your ice cream truck and suit up and show up. And there was this place called Lottie's, Lotties. And I guess it had used to be like maybe a fast food joint, like a Hardee's or something. But that was where everybody would go the morning after to get like coffee and breakfast or whatever, so that you could get back out on your route. And so you'd see all these ice cream trucks at Lottie's, and everybody was all glassy-eyed and sick and hungover, trying to get some grease in your system to cut through the other substances. But then, so the routes, like I had these new routes, and I was going to a different place almost every day. So I really wasn't connecting with people like I had the year before. But the routes were very depressing, and they were sort of, a lot of them were projects, and some were like rural, poor government housing kind of situations. Well, this one day, I went out to this place near Cartersville, Georgia, and I just kind of stumbled upon it, and it was sort of like a park, and there was a basketball court, and across the street there what seemed to be some government housing. And so I pull up to this, this kind of park area and just rang the bell, and there were all these young men playing basketball, and they were probably in their 20s, and everybody kind of stopped like deer in the headlights, like, oh my God, an ice cream truck. It was like they'd never seen an ice cream truck. And so these guys started coming over, and all these children came running from the playground, and the guys had wallets and they had some money, but the kids didn't have a penny to their name. And so most of these guys bought these children ice cream, which I thought was really sweet. And the kids got their ice cream and started kind of walking off. And then the guys, they were kind of picking, but they'd kind of say a little thing here and there and then look at me to see what kind of reaction I was going to have. And, the ice cream van that I was driving, it didn't have any windows in it, because it was somebody else's truck. And so I was kind of like getting a little bit nervous because there were guys coming around behind me. And so they started making comments, about my hair and my tan and my legs. And they started kind of making these innuendos and saying sort of inappropriate things. And this one guy reached in and he ran his fingers down the front of my leg. And he said, God, your skin is so smooth. And, well, let me tell you what, my inner alarm clock went off. And I thought, I got to get out of here. And the next thing I know, they started sort of rocking this ice cream truck. And they were kind of like getting really inappropriate. And I thought, I've got to get out of here now. And so instead of being fearful, I sort of laughed at them and I go, y'all are crazy. And I sort of played it off like they were being funny. And I put that thing in drive and I didn't give a shit if I ran over them, and I got the fuck out of there. Well, that really scared me, and that really kind of informed me that I need to be more careful. Because there was there weren't that many girl drivers, and I think the guys were just used to taking care of themselves, and guys didn't hit on guys, so obviously not like that. So I got out of there, and then this other day, I was in another similar situation, and this guy came up and he had a joint over his ear, and that seemed to be the thing, like when they try to trade you for ice cream for a joint or for their kids or whatever. But he was acting kind of weird and hanging around, and after the kids walked away, he goes, hey, can you give me a ride up the street? And I said, no, I can't let anybody in the van. It's company policy. And he's, no, I just need a ride up the street. And the next thing I know, he's opened the door and he's in. And he sat in the floorboard because there's no chair, there's no passenger seat. And he said, I just need to go up this road. And I looked up the street and it just looked like kind of a short street. So I thought, well, all right. So we start going up the street. And by that last situation, I'd gotten me a knife. And I kept that knife under my leg in my seat when I would go in these kind of sketchy situations. Well, my heart started pounding, and we started going up that street, and it's like wooded. There weren't any houses up there. And I said, where are we going? He goes, oh, just right up here, just right up here. And I knew in my gut, it's like that little thing saying, get him out, get him out. We went a little bit further, and finally I stopped and I turned and I said, get the fuck out. He goes, no, I just need you. No, I said, you need to get out now. And he started reaching over to me, and I pulled that knife out and said, get out now. I'm going to fucking cut you up. And I was about to kick him, and he got out. And he, whoa, and then he was like, he called me some name, and I turned around, I backed up in the ditch, and I got out of there. So I had these close calls, but I started realizing I need to stay in groups and not get too, alone. But things got darker and darker, and these projects looked like war zones. I mean, there was just such poverty, and there would be like boarded up windows and graffiti, and it was very depressing. And I felt very guilty, because especially if a child had a penny or a dime or a quarter, I just felt guilty taking it because it was just sad. And I kept thinking, what is going to happen to these little children? It was just breaking my heart on a daily basis. It was so depressing. And I would come back, from the day of being on the route, and I would not be happy. I would be very down. And of course, that's a great time to go drink, and so I would keep continually going out and going with whoever to wherever and getting pretty wasted. Well, then I would have that inner calling, the after hours, after the hours to go to the gay bars. And I would head down and I would run the extension cord of the ice cream truck behind the bar and sneak out and go back through the front door. And I always kind of felt like an observer, like I was like a weird spy or something. And I would watch people because I would already be pretty tanked, and I would just sort of sit and drink and observe and watch. And I was always longing, to meet somebody, or, Ann number one would call me because she played this whole game with me like distancer pursuer. And of course I found out about this stuff later in life. It was kind of like the minute I would stop pursuing her, well, she'd be hot on my trail calling me and why don't you come out? Why don't we meet up? And wanting to be with me. But then, if I called her or whatever, she was always busy. So it was a really weird dynamic. And it was almost like she didn't want anybody else to have me, but she wanted to be able to just do whatever she wanted to do. So, but I would go in, and I remember there was like a pecking order amongst the gay women. And I never felt like I fit in, I mean, there were the popular girls that would come in with their entourage and their popped collars and they're real dressed up, and I didn't really fit in with them. And then there would be like the real dykey girls that would be like the Mac Daddy sitting at the bar, checking everybody out, and I didn't really fit in with them. And then there would be like these sporty kind of girls, like athletes, and they would all kind of be like hooked up together with other athletes that I didn't really fit in with them. And, there I was with an ice cream truck and rode a motorcycle. I don't know. I just didn't really feel like I fit in. I knew I was gay. And there was this one particular girl that I started watching, and her name was Carrie, and she was a punk rocker. And she had this white, like platinum hair, and it was kind of spiked. And she was real good looking, but she wore dark eye makeup, and I'd never seen anybody like her because punk was kind of a new thing, that whole way of being a punker. They just looked different, and so I was kind of attracted to her. But the drunker I would get, I would sort of take on this British persona, and I would put on this British accent. And this one night I saw her going in and out of the bathroom, and so finally I waited on her to come out of the bathroom. And I approached her and I told her that I was an undercover cop, but I was talking a Cockney accent, the British accent, and she looked really shocked. And so I told her that I knew she had cocaine, and before you know it, it ends up we're laughing, we're in my ice cream truck doing the coke, laughing, the whole thing. It was ridiculously stupid, but I was just constantly trying to find a place. I just could not find where I fit. And I remember that Ann had told me, I'd taken her down to Florida and for like a week. And, because I made good money in this ice cream business. And I think I was trying to buy her affection or buy her love. And I mean, we had chemistry. It wasn't like somebody that didn't have chemistry. We had bad chemistry. I think that was the problem, too much chemistry. And we went down to Florida and we spent a whole week, and we got back, and then she completely disconnected from me. And I remember how bad it hurt me. Like, I felt used. And so this one night I was pretty drunk, and she had told me that her parents were going to be out of town, and I thought, I'm just going to ride by her house. And when I rode by her house, I saw her car and I saw Karen's car in the driveway, and they both had Fiat Spider convertibles. And I parked out front, and it was like this sort of rage started taking me over. And I knocked on the door, and they wouldn't come to the door. And I turned into this animal, more or less, and I busted the door down, the front door of the house. I don't know how I got that door open, but I just kicked it in, and I ended up going up the steps. And I had been in that house, and I knew where her room was, and I knew where her parents' room. And I saw a light up under the parents' door, and so I just went straight in, and they were sitting in bed smoking a joint. And Anne had been over at my house. See, the week before, she'd come over at my dad's apartment and, spent time with me and then cut my hair. And she gave me a pretty bad haircut. And so Karen was sitting there with kind of a smirk, and she said, "Nice haircut." Well, when those words came out of her mouth, I just dove onto the bed, onto her, and we started a 3-way knockdown drag out. It was horrible. Next thing I know, they've got me down on the floor, just beating me in the head with a fucking hairdryer. And it was just a horrible, horrible situation. And we tore that house up. We tore that bedroom up. And I remember the door jam. I remember pulling the door jam. It was a horrible situation. Well, I made it back on 285. I thought, I'm going to run this fucking ice cream truck into the median and just end it. I can't take this anymore. It was painful. There was so much pain involved in this, what I thought was a relationship. It was a sick obsession, but I didn't know that. I was young and I was pretty pathetic, but my heart was hurting me so deeply that I didn't want to live. I didn't want to continue this. And so there was a part of me that really wanted to run that ice cream truck into the median and just end it. Well, I was too chicken shit to do it. And so I ended up back at my dad's, and I was pretty much about to hyperventilate because I knew what had just happened was horrible. It was violent and it was bad. And I was sitting on his couch, and he had this small little kind of couch, and behind it was these Asian pictures, and he had this geisha doll in this kind of glass box. He was real into like Japanese decor because he had spent some time in Japan. But I remember just holding my face in my hands and just boo-hooing, just crying my face off. And he got out of bed and he came in there and he goes, "What happened? What's wrong?" And I couldn't even talk. I was just hyperventilating. And he said, "Curly, what is it?" He called me Curly. That was my nickname. And I said, I can't. And I couldn't talk. And he said, "Who hurt you?" And then he said, "Who is he?" Well, at that moment, I couldn't lie anymore. And I said, "It's not a he, it's a she." And then the minute I said it, I knew I shouldn't have said it. Oh my God. Well, he got kind of quiet, and he said, all right, you just go on to bed. Well, the next morning when I got up, he had left me a note, and it said, "You need to be home early this evening. We need to talk." And I was just sick. I was hungover as usual and sick. And next thing I know, I hear a knock at the door. And I go to the door and I look through the peephole, and it's Anne, number one. There she is. And I'm thinking, oh no, because I had that whole thing had gone down. When I opened that door, she came in and started pushing me against the wall. And she said, I'm going to tear this fucking place up. And she went crazy, and she started trying to tear up my dad's apartment. And she went over to that geisha doll that was in that glass box and went and was going to knock it off the wall. Well, I grabbed her and I held her from behind, and I was holding her because I'm very strong when I'm angry. And I held her. Well, the next thing I know, she turns around and she grabs my face and she just starts kissing me. And the next thing you know, we're in the floor. It's this whole big old dramatic, sexual encounter. And I'm like, right back on my knees, right back in this like weak place, because she knew how to control me with that sexuality. And then there I am, she's like, I don't know what to do about my parents' house. I've got to fix it. And I said, just find some guys. They were building new houses in the neighborhood. I said, find some guys and get them to fix the sheetrock and get them to fix it, and I'll pay for it. And I remember giving her like $400 and fixing all of that, and that would be like this routine. That was sort of an ongoing sort of dysfunctional way of being with her. It'd be like this hardcore kind of sexual energy, and then it would be like, I hate your fucking guts, kind of love-hate. I guess you could call it love-hate. Well, that night my dad came back, and there I was, and we had to talk, and boy, he laid it down. He just said, Curly, you're sick. You got to move out. You can't live here and live like this. And I started trying to backpedal. I was like, Daddy, I was just drunk. I didn't mean it. I was just drunk, Daddy. I'm sorry. I just, and he knew. And he said, no, you're going to have to go. Well, it kind of just laid there. We didn't really do anything about it. And I knew what the solution would be for me to get a boyfriend. And I'll just start bringing home the guys. And so I started bringing home Bill and Greg, the freezer manager, and Chip. That was this kind of new guy. And Chip was kind of like a kind of hippie kind of guy. And he had kind of reddish blonde hair, real kind of permed out and real frizzy, and wore like a tie-dye t-shirt and had like strawberry freckles on his arms, and he was real nice and he liked me. And so I'd say, y'all just come over at my house and play cards. And I still couldn't play cards. I just pretend. But Daddy, he would sort of laugh at some of their jokes. And, my dad had to get up and go to Kodak, but he was drinking and smoking too. So he sort of hung out for a little while, and then he'd be like, well, I got to go to bed. Y'all don't stay up too late. And we were like, okay. And so I figured out I'm going to have to kind of create my own conversion therapy. Here we go again.
Hammered is recorded and produced in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. It's narrated by Jill Haynie, produced by Maggie Briggs and Jill Haynie, and with sound design, editing, and music by Alexander Rodriguez. Our beautiful artwork was created by Lauren Caddick, and we'd like to send a special thanks out there to Minnie and Robin. You can check out our website, podcasthammered.com, and follow us on social media for updates.